Hello everyone, it's Dustin and welcome back to another episode of the Lore of the Ring. I'm very excited to be recording again tonight. It is episode 3. Episodes 1 and 2 have had such good feedback and that means so much to me. Of course, episode 1 covered WrestleMania 22. Episode 2 was Bash at the Beach 1996. And tonight we're going to yet another promotion. This one's very near and dear to my heart. That's right, I'm talking about ECW, the land of the extreme, the land of the misfit toys, depending on who you ask. But ECW was such a big part of my childhood and my fandom. I'm very excited to be talking about this. And now, while this isn't the original ECW that I'm talking about, this show that we're covering tonight happened after ECW was purchased and bought out by Vince McMahon in the WWE. It's still such an important show in history and in my history especially, just because of what it meant. I'm talking about, of course, ECW One Night Stand 2005. Now, in November 2004, the WWE released a DVD called The Rise and Fall of ECW, and that DVD did so well. Dave Meltzer named it the DVD of the year, and at the time that it was released, it was the best-selling WWE DVD all time, trailing only WrestleMania 21. Now, following this success, Rob Van Dam had been talking to Vince McMahon about, hey, we need to do an ECW reunion show, and Vince just kind of brushed it off. No, we're not doing that. No interest in it. But after seeing the success of this DVD, kind of changed his mind on that. So he gave it the green light, and Tommy Dreamer was actually in charge. He worked with Paul Heyman, and they were in charge of putting the show together. So they put the matches together. They contacted all the talent to see who would be interested. But something that's unfortunate about the show is that talent that was under contract at the time for TNA, they weren't allowed. And, that's really unfortunate because that means guys like Jerry Lynn, Raven, Shane Douglas, guys that were such big parts of the original ECW, they were off limits. So while the WWE was planning on putting on this ECW tribute show, Shane Douglas said, okay, you don't want to do that? Fine. He threw his own show. It's called Hardcore Homecoming. It took place in the original ECW arena in Philly. And, you had certain guys work that show and not work the WWE show. Certain guys worked both. And obviously there were some guys that weren't allowed to work the WWE show. But, Terry Funk was he was in talks to do the ECW One Night Stand, but he decided to do the Hardcore Homecoming instead, and he actually took about a third of the money that WWE had offered him to do it because, quote, he didn't want Vince McMahon making money off the ECW name. Now, that's kind of funny after the fact, knowing that Terry did end up working the ECW One Night Stand 2006 show. But at the time, he took that moral stance, and you got to commend him for it. That Hardcore Homecoming show, the card is phenomenal. Hats off to Shane Douglas and everyone that was involved with that. It still would have been cool to see, some of these guys get that big rub that this show gave so many guys. Now, ECW Arena was not the venue for this show we're talking about tonight. Instead, Vince and the WWE chose Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. Because number one, it had a great look. They love the look of this arena. If you're familiar, it's where they used to do the WWF Monday Night Raws in the beginning. But also, they didn't feel that the ECW Arena or the Elks Lodge, which was the ECW's other primary filming location, they didn't feel that they were suited for the production needs that this show was going to take with the WWE production crews. Now, the build to get to this show started out on Monday Night Raw. It was May 19th. You had Chris Benoit talking to Tajiri, and they talked about they wanted to, pay tribute to ECW since both of them had spent time there. And they went out and had an Extreme Rules match on Raw. And then, at the time, Eric Bischoff, he was the authority figure on screen, and he said, no ECW talk. We're going to kill ECW. Later in the month, he actually held an ECW funeral on WWE TV. And so there's your build right there. It sets up this WWE versus ECW angle where you've got the two sides drawn, line in the sand, and yeah, it's who are you with. But here we are. It's June 12th, 2005. We're in Hammerstein Ballroom, sold out house, 2,500 fans on hand for a packed house. It looked incredible. The fans were passionate. Of course, you knew they were going to be. Fans still chant ECW during certain spots. But, something that's interesting and honestly wild to think about when you look back at this show is that Vince McMahon and Paul Heyman were both in Gorilla all night, and they produced the commentary. And that's just crazy to think about. Vince working Gorilla at an ECW show. Some of the boys didn't get along with him. He didn't think highly of them, but it was a business. It was a business decision, and all sides got along. But the show opens. The crowd is absolutely electric from beginning to end. As soon as the cameras go live, ECW chants abundant. Then Joey Styles is out. He gets a great pop, and honestly, I'm immediately in my feels. Nostalgia is flowing through my veins, and the first words out of his mouth are, "Oh my God!" Just how perfect was that? And, Joey's clearly emotional. He's fighting back some tears, and honestly, I was emotional too, man. I mean, like I said, ECW, very important to me, and love to see this. And then he brings out his announce partner for the night, which is Mick Foley. I mean, I love Mick. It's a good choice. But Joey, for the most part, was a solo act. He didn't really need a dance partner and commentary. But, unless if you're going to bring out maybe Joel Gertner to join him or Cyrus the Virus, a.k.a. Don Callis, I would have liked either one of them on commentary with Joey more than I ended up liking Mick. But I get it. Vince wanted someone on commentary with Joey that he knew he could trust, that, if he says something in the headpiece, he knows that it's going to get said or it's going to get fixed. And you have to include Mick Foley. I mean, he was ECW through and through as well. So I get it. Just wasn't my favorite choice. It is what it is. Let's get to the card, though. First match is a very good one. You got Lance Storm. He comes out with Don Marie, and he's facing Lionheart Chris Jericho. Now, this match was originally meant to be Lance Storm's retirement match, and doing it with his best friend, that's a great touch. Now, Lance did have some matches after this one, but I think this was his last, big hoorah. I love seeing Jericho in his Lionheart gear. That's a great nostalgic moment there. And this is a perfect match to put on first, because you got all those people that want to just shit on the ECW program and product and say that it was nothing but hardcore nonsense and violence. These two wrestled. And I do love that Mick Foley, mentioned that these two got their big break in the United States wrestling in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I mean, that's my backyard. I grew up going to Smoky Mountain Wrestling with my dad, and I saw the Thrill Seekers, as they were known at the time. I saw them multiple times wrestle for Jim Cornette's promotion there. Now, the finish of this match, it sees Justin Credible and Jason come down to help Lance Storm after Don Marie distracts the ref. Jericho gets Storm in a roll-up, but Storm kicks out and pushes him in the ropes where Justin Credible is waiting, and he nails him with a kendo stick. Storm gets the pin for the win. The ref's back was turned to the rope, so he didn't see the kendo stick. I mean, it's a solid finish. It works for me. Lance Storm gets the win, which I think is a very classy touch by Jericho to do the job for his friend here, and like I said, what was meant to be his retirement match. It's a very solid opener. Dave Meltzer, who, like I said, he's not the end-all, be-all, know-all of wrestling authority, but his star ratings mean something to a certain portion of the wrestling audience, so it's worth mentioning. And he gave this match 3.25 stars. I think I agree with that. I mean, it's a solid opener. So next you got Joey Styles mentioning that there's going to be an invasion from the WWE roster, and it shows some empty seats in the balcony that the WWE has purchased. I'll be honest with you. My only negative from this show is the invasion angle. And, WWE wants to kill ECW once and for all. Like, that storyline, I get it. You're not going to do something under the WWE banner without WWE being heavily involved. But, just let them have their one night. Let us have this one night as ECW fans. And it is what it is. It's fine. But then we get something very emotional. This has actually been a topic of conversation for a lot of people. We go backstage. It's Pitbull Gary Wolf, and he throws to a montage of fallen ECW wrestlers. You got Rocco Rock, Bam Bam Terry Gordy, Mike Lockwood, a.k.a. Crash Holly, the original Sheik, who of course is Sabu's uncle, Mike Lazansky, Pitbull Anthony Durante, Big Dick Dudley, Chris Candido, who had actually just passed away a couple of months before this show, was originally in the plans for this show. But just heavy stuff here. It's a very nicely done tribute. But the reason it's been a topic of discussion is because, is this the right time to do it? I guess there is no right time, really. There's no easy segue to something like this. But you just had a pretty hot open, great match to start, and then you take everybody so down, get everybody all emotional. I don't know. I'm fine with it. It was very well done. Nice touch. And then you go right to our next match. Styles explains that it's an elimination triple threat match. You got first out is Tajiri. He comes out with Mikey Whipwreck and the Sinister Minister with him. The FBI is out next. It's Little Guido, who's actually in the match, and he's accompanied by Tracy Smothers, JT Smith, Big Guido, and Tony Mamaluke. So you got the whole FBI there. Perfectly done. And last out, you've got Super Crazy. And from the guys that are involved in this match, there's going to be some great action here. Plenty of high spots and just an all-out barn burner. Funny enough, this actually is a rematch. These three, well, I'm sure a lot of these matches are a rematch, but I just happened to randomly put on ECW Anarchy Rules 1999 just as I was going to sleep. Just wanted something as background noise when I was going to sleep recently. And this match actually was on that card too. They didn't have all the guys coming out to the ring with them, not all these same guys, but still, I thought that was cool. And the match does not disappoint. We get a barn burner. Super Crazy and Little Guido, they get into the fans at one point, and then Super Crazy actually does a moonsault off the balcony onto the FBI. Just an incredible spot there. The match breaks down when the FBI get fully involved, and they attack Tajiri, but then Mikey and Sinister Minister even the odds, and then Tajiri actually gives Guido, who's on the top rope, the green mist. And then Mikey comes in and hits him with the whippersnapper, a.k.a. the stunner off the top rope. And Little Guido's eliminated. Super Crazy ends up getting the win after a trio of moonsaults. And, man, just a fun match here. Great, full of spots. And like I said, that Super Crazy moonsault off the balcony is worth going back. It's worth the cost of admission alone. Meltzer gave this one 2.5 stars. To me, that's low. This match was a ton of fun. Next up, we get a very nice montage of ECW's history. We get a lot of classic clips here, and it's very interesting to me that they included Shane Douglas cutting a promo in this because he wasn't even allowed to be at the show. But, I mean, you can't tell the ECW story without including Shane Douglas, so it just makes it suck even more, though, that he wasn't allowed to be involved in this. But just some great memories here. We got an Extreme Lucha match next. It's Psychosis versus Rey Mysterio. And if you'll remember, I just talked about on the last episode how much fun and how great their match was at the Bash of the Beach 1996. I mean, that's an all-time great match. And it's cool that we get to see them go at it again here. Mick mentions that their feud from 1995 was the ECW Feud of the Year. And Styles mentions how they've actually wrestled over 500 times in their career. But the crowd's a little flat in this one. Ray doesn't get the pop you would expect, and the fans actually even chanted something at Psychosis that had to hurt his feelings. I mean, when he came out, he unmasked. He wore the mask to the ring, but then took it off, and that's meant he wasn't wearing the mask at the time in his other runs that he was doing outside of ECW, but he wore the mask just as a tribute to let the fans know, hey, it's me, nice nostalgia with the mask here, but it's actually a huge sign of respect to unmask in front of the fans. They started chanting, put the mask on. So I think, honestly, the fans are flat here because they're disappointed that both of these guys are here as WWE representatives, and they're just not their old selves. They want that old feel. I mean, Ray came out with his, who's that jumping out the sky, R-E-Y, music, and these fans didn't come here to see WWE Rey Mysterio. They want that old thing back. They even boo and chant boring at points of this match. But they change their minds when Psychosis hangs Ray over the guardrail outside the ring and then does a guillotine leg drop from the top turnbuckle. So, one way to get everybody back on your side, some crazy spots. And later, Psychosis actually ended up in the front row of the fans, and Ray jumps off the top rope and does a senton onto him. Now, Ray does a 619 in this match, and the crowd booed. So I told you, they just don't want that WWE stuff in this venue. But he connects with the West Coast Pop and gets the win. But a very disappointing match, honestly, considering what we saw on Bash at the Beach 95, which I covered last episode. Going from that match to this match, it was disappointing. It was flat, but it was still a pretty solid match. Meltzer gave it 2.5 stars. And then, as if the crowd wasn't angry enough at the WWE and, the WWE versions of Rey and Psychosis that we just saw, now the SmackDown wrestlers show up. The fans are chanting that JBL does oral favors, and then they start chanting F you SmackDown, and I completely condone it. Let ECW have their night. I don't want them here. That's okay. It happens. Then Joey says, he can't stand to look at them anymore and just roll any footage, and we get another classic montage filled with some great ECW moments. These montages are all just so well done. But when we get back to the arena here, Joel Gertner's out for the first time tonight, and he heads to interview the SmackDown guys. But Kurt Angle steals the mic, and JBL shoves him down to the ground, and they cut heel promos on the crowd. Loud shut the F up chants almost drowned them out, though. Honestly, like I said, it just pisses me off to this day that we couldn't just have an ECW night. I'm not going to keep harping on it, though. Thankfully, RVD's music hits after way too long, and he comes out with Fonzie. Bill Alfonso's with him, and the crowd just goes nuts. He cuts a great promo talking about how no one is limiting his speech tonight, and he's got no one writing for him, and then he talks about how this show actually came to be. Just absolutely sucks that he couldn't wrestle on this card, He was injured, had to have knee surgery, and he was out. But then Rhino comes out and out of nowhere just gores RVD and starts stomping him. But then the lights go out. And when they come back on, Sabo's in the ring. And that's how we get to our next match. Our first chair shot of the night comes when Sabu cracks Rhino in the head with a chair and knocks him to the floor from the top rope. This match had the extreme spots that we expected. This is what a lot of fans wanted to see and what a lot of fans expected. Plenty of chair shots. You got high-flying moves from Sabu. Rhino accidentally gores the referee. Then RVD gets involved, and man, you can tell how much this show means to him. This is shortly after ACL and meniscus surgery, and on one leg, he delivers a chair shot to Rhino and then does a running drop kick onto a chair in the corner on Rhino. The finish sees Sabu doing a leg drop, the Arabian face buster, onto Rhino through a table, and he gets the pinfall. 3.25 stars from Uncle Dave there. Then we cut to backstage, and Al Snow's here, and he's got head. Good stuff here. He talks about how who invited the WWE guys. It's just really good. And he throws to another great memories montage that, again, is top-notch quality. And that moment is short-lived and ruined by the Raw superstars arriving. But thankfully, they don't cut a promo like the SmackDown guys, and it's time for our next match. And boy, on paper, this should be the best match of the night. It's Chris Benoit, it's Eddie Guerrero, but it wasn't the best match of the night. Eddie phoned it in. He was mad that he had to do a clean finish. He didn't feel like he should have to do a clean finish and lose to Benoit coming off of his heel run, his great heel run that he was actively doing in WWE. He was also pissed that the crowd was preoccupied cussing out the WWE guys, and he was pissed off that he got cut early in the match on his nose. I mean, this match should have been 5 stars, but it was just disappointing. Benoit was mad at Eddie for half-assing it. The two actually had a heated argument backstage about this match, and it was just gut-wrenching to watch this match back also, knowing what we know about these two. Both would be gone tragically too early under very different circumstances, sure. But, these two were two of my childhood favorites, 2 all-time greats in the ring, stressing that. But, for them to go out there and put on a disappointing performance, it's kind of sad. I mean, Dave did give it a 3.25 stars on this one. I think that's a little too generous, if I'm being honest. Now we've got Joel Gertner's back. He's got the WWE guys, and of course, Eric Bischoff has to cut an anti-ECW promo. That's the storyline they're going with here. And it was funny, though, because Gertner begged him for a job. So through all this, through all the WWE stuff that I wish wasn't there, Gertner was great. Shout out to Joel Gertner. But the next match here, man, this next match. Mike Awesome, Masato Tanaka, just 2 big dudes giving us a solid match. Now, this is one of those matches that Big E would talk about when it's two big meaty men slapping meat. That's what this match is. Joey Styles had a yikes comment in this one, though. He shoots on Mike Awesome, and pretty heavily during the match. He's talking about how Awesome left and walked out on ECW just to sell out to WCW and all that. But at one point, Awesome does a suicide dive over the top rope, and Joey said, "It's a shame he didn't succeed in taking his own life." Yikes. That's tough to listen back to because, as we all know, Awesome didn't, he's no longer with us. He didn't live the life that he really should have, especially, lengthwise. But we, back to the action, we get a great table spot in this one. Mike Awesome gives an awesome bomb to Tanaka off the ring apron through a table on the floor. Awesome also delivers 3 consecutive brutal unprotected chair shots to the head of Tanaka. And Tanaka does a tornado DDT to Awesome off the top rope through a table in the ring. And then Awesome hops up and gives Tanaka an awesome bomb off the top rope that through that smashed table. That was a dangerous spot. There was metal from that table sticking up, and man, it could have impaled Tanaka. That was brutal. That was one of those spots that made me sit up a little bit closer to the TV on the edge of my seat because he could have been stabbed with that table. The finish comes, though, when Awesome gave Tanaka an awesome bomb over the top rope through a table on the floor and then dove on top of him from the ring and pinned him on the outside. The fans ate this match up. They loved it. I loved it. Great match. Highest rating of the night from Meltzer. Got 4.25 stars. And yeah, may not have been the best technical wrestling, but you have to take everything into consideration, including crowd participation and how much the crowd's into it. And this one had it. Incredible. Paulie's out next. You can't have an ECW show without Paulie. Paulie Dangerously, a.k.a. Paul Heyman, of course. And the crowd is showing their love to Paulie, and he's visibly emotional. Thank you, Paul chants break out. And, he had a funny line. He said that he's not crying. His eyes are just red because he was in the back smoking a blunt with RVD. And then what a promo he cuts here. He shoots on Bischoff. He calls him a bitch. He tells everyone to hide their wives because Edge is there. And, of course, we know what was going on at the time in Edge's real life. The whole Matt Hardy and Lita love triangle that they were involved in. Matt Hardy got fired from the WWE at the time because of it, because he couldn't be professional and keep his work separate from his home life. And then he tells Edge that there's 2 words that he's going to say to him because no one else has the balls to, and that's Matt freaking Hardy. Then he shoots on JBL. He told JBL that the only reason he was WWE champ for a year is because Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays. Of course, referring to the fact that SmackDown at the time was taped on Tuesdays. Just a brilliant promo from Paul E. Dangerously here. I loved it. And after that, how do you follow that up? With the main event. It's the Dudleys. They're out first. They've got their classic tie-dye shirts. And this would actually be the Dudleys' last performance for the WWE for 10 years. They were involved in contract negotiations at the time with the WWE. And actually earlier this day, WWE actually lowballed the Dudleys. They asked him to take a pay cut. And so Bubba Ray has actually been on record saying that him and Devon were not in the right mindset to go out here and have this match and do it justice. But they are professionals, and they put all that behind them, and they delivered. And their opponents are out next is Tommy Dreamer. He's out first, and he gets a great reception from the crowd. And you can even see him say on camera that he's got goosebumps. But next, my God, what an entrance. It's one of the most iconic entrances in wrestling history as is. And I'm talking about the Sandman. Now, if you watch this on the WWE Network or on Peacock, you're not going to hear it because they changed it. But for this night, WWE licensed Enter Sandman by Metallica. So it was authentic. You got the real Sandman entrance here, which shout out to them for doing that. That's awesome. But he comes in, he's through the crowd like we're used to seeing. And the crowd was electric, though. You want to talk about feels. This right here does it. He's ripping cigs. He's chugging beer. He's smashing cans on his head. He's busted open before the match starts. Just what a scene. It's just like old times. Just like it was supposed to be. He goes through like 5 beers by the time it's all said and done. He meets Dreamer over by the ring, and we see ECW original Elektra in the crowd. And he pours a beer all over Elektra's chest, and he and Tommy motorboat it off. And, I mean, this is the ECW feel right here. It had it all. And the funny thing about it is just Sandman's entrance alone took over 5 full minutes. So they got their money's worth out of that Enter Sandman song. But then, before the match starts, all hell broke loose. The Blue World Order comes out. The BWO, Big Stevie Cool, the Blue Meanie, and Hollywood Nova. And after they cut a promo, they all start fighting. They attack Dreamer and Sandman here. And to even the score, Kid Cash comes out. He enters the brawl. And then the hardcore chair swinging freaks are out. It's Balls Mahoney. It's Axel Rotten. And Joey Styles actually has a great line here after some chair shots to Hollywood Nova. He says, "That's more painful than having to be Simon Dean on national TV. Yeah, I'm fired. I know." Man, that's great because, of course, Hollywood Nova had to play the ridiculous character of Simon Dean on WWE TV when he was actually a great wrestler. And Joey just saying, you know what? This is a one-night thing. Show's almost over. Middle finger, WWE. Love that. And, you know, the group is outside the ring now, and they navigate over to the entrance ramp. And then Kid Cash, he's in the ring. He tells the ref to get down on all fours. He takes off running, jumps off the ref's back, springboards off the top rope, does a flip onto the group on the floor. Insane spot. Perfect. Kid Cash did not botch at all, like a professional that he is. That's what some of the wrestling nowadays is missing. When you want to try to do these high-flying spots, make sure that you can actually do them. And Kid Cash landed. And then the group is they're out. BWO, Hardcore Chair Swinging Freaks, Kid Cash, they brawl all the way to the back. So their spot's over with, and now our match can finally start. And this match is extreme. You've got trash cans, road signs, a cheese grater. Yes, a cheese grater. A ladder. I mean, this match is just brutal. Then out of nowhere, the Impact players are out. You've got Justin Credible and Lance Storm. They make their way back to the ring. They bring barbed wire, and Sandman is tombstoned on top of it. Then Francine comes out. She kicks Dreamer in the jewels, and Beulah comes out, of course, to help her man. She attacks Francine, and they roll around on the ground for a while. It's a cat fight. And after clearing the ring, though, Tommy Dreamer and Beulah hug, and it's a great moment there. I mean, emotional if you know their real life storyline and their ECW storyline. That was awesome to see. And then Dreamer and Beulah hit stereo DDTs on the Dudleys. Try not to pay attention to Bubba Ray's botch. He's actually upset about it, and Beulah was too, but just take it for what it was. It was a great spot. And we do get a funny spot here where Dreamer and Sandman have Devon on his back. Sandman pulls his legs back, and they place a chair between his legs. And he and Dreamer do the wazab, and Dreamer hits the chair with the road sign. And that was a fun spot. Devon can sell like none other when it's a crotch shot. And Joey Styles says that they've crushed a man's balls, and then he said, "I'm being told in my headset that I'm not allowed to say the word balls. I'm very sorry if I offended anyone by saying balls." So that was great stuff too. Stick it to the WWE production. Vince is in his ear going nuts, I'm sure, and he doesn't care. Like I said, it's a one-night show. He's not under contract to WWE. Who cares? And then Spike Dudley comes out, and they light a table on fire and powerbomb Dreamer through the table, and that's how the match ends. They get the 1, 2, 3. But funny thing about this, Spike was actually drunk when he came out to the ring. And then he starts arguing with the Dudleys and starts and wouldn't give them the lighter fluid and started cutting a promo on them. He started shooting on Bubba and Devon in the ring there. And another funny story is that earlier in the day, Tommy Dreamer, since like I said, he was in charge of putting this show together. He wrote the show. It was him and Paul. That's their show. He had to meet with the fire marshal, and when they explained this spot to him, he actually had to go through a flaming table to show him how it was going to be done and show him that it was safe. But they barely used any lighter fluid. I mean, they just used a touch just to set the table on fire. And they used a lot more here. So I'm sure the fire marshal was watching and gave them a stern talking to after the show. But this match, I mean, all 4 men bled. All 4 men gave a hell of a performance. The match had run-ins by a ton of people, and it just worked. It wasn't distracting. It just worked. We needed as many ECW originals on the show as possible. Great way to do it here. 3.25 stars from Dave Meltzer on this one, but honestly, that doesn't even matter. This match isn't about the star ratings. This match isn't about anything other than nostalgia. Give the fans what they want. Let's get people out here and let's send everybody home happy. But we're not done. That was the main event, but we are far from done. Because after the match, Stone Cold's music hits. That's right. Stone Cold. He's an ECW original too. He spent some time there in 1995. Now, the funniest part about this segment to me is that he comes out wearing a worn-out XFL jersey. I mean, this thing looks like it's been put in the dryer more times than you can count. And he tells Sandman that he's got plenty of beer because Sandman's, drunk, stumbling around saying he needs a beer. He tells him he's got plenty of beer, but he wants all the boys in the back to come out for a beer bash. And it's perfect. So many ECW legends, including guys that didn't make it on the card, but still meant so much to my childhood and so much to the ECW story and legacy. I got chills. Stone Cold says they can have a beer, but first he wants a fight. He calls out the WWE guys that are in the balcony. The WWE guys get in the ring and they're lined up. ECW on one side, WWE on the other. Then Taz's music hits and he comes out. Awesome. Meanwhile, Bischoff, he had joined Joey and Mick on commentary. And Joey tells Bischoff, he starts shooting on Bischoff, and he tells him that he's the worst GD commentator that he's ever heard. And if he didn't run that company, he would have never got a freaking headset talking about Bischoff's run on commentary in WCW. Sheesh. That was brutal stuff. But then the brawl breaks out. Now, during this scrum, there's a very infamous story, I guess you can call it. JBL, he was throwing live rounds. He was throwing shoot haymakers at Blue Meanie. Meanie got roughed up pretty good. But then ECW clears the ring, and then Stone Cold gets in the ring, and he has Mick Foley bring Bischoff to the ring. And the Dudleys give him a 3D. Then Benoit hits him with a diving headbutt. Then Ray hits a 619. Great stuff. There's no bigger heel on this show than Eric Bischoff. The fans hated him, and rightfully so. And he asked him, he being Austin, asked Eric Bischoff for his thoughts on the night. And Bischoff yells, F-ECW. So Austin has him stood up, and he gives him a stunner to end it. Austin's music hits. The Dudleys carry Bischoff out of the arena, and the EC roster enjoys a nice cold beer with Stone Cold. Nice beer bash. It's really cool to see Stone Cold get this reception from the crowd because he was WWE, right? Everybody knows Stone Cold from WWE, and he spent less than a year in ECW. But he considers himself an ECW guy. I mean, he really developed the Stone Cold character with his promos and his ability, his freedom to develop himself and become comfortable with himself. He found that in ECW. He only actually had one match while he was in ECW, and it was a loss to Mikey Shipwreck. And it's kind of funny because the Stone Cold Stunner, Austin has said, he stole it from Mikey Whipwreck. It's the whippersnapper. That's where he got his finisher. And his whole beer drinking gimmick, he got it from Sandman. So it's really cool to know that Stone Cold, so many people's favorite all-time wrestler, someone who meant so much to the WWF Attitude Era, he considers himself an ECW guy. And that's just a cool little thing for me, if no one else. And then, some other show notes here. According to ECW ring announcer Steven DeAngelis, the original ending in the script had something that was cut out altogether. It was a shot of Vince and Paul backstage, and Vince told Paul, he said, well, Paul, maybe ECW's not dead after all. But they scrapped it all together and just went with the extended beer bash scene. And honestly, I like that. We know that we get a reincarnation of ECW out of this, but I don't think that you should have built expectations too much after this show. I think when this show was all said and done, we thought it was a one-off show, and I think that was perfect. That's what we needed. And then, Heyman cut that promo, but originally it wasn't going to happen. Paul actually convinced Tommy Dreamer to cut a match out so that he could cut that promo. Tommy didn't want to do it, but he agreed to it because they figured out how to get everyone that was supposed to be in that match on the show. And that's the run-in that we got before the main event. So the BWO, Kid Cash, the Chair Swinging Freaks, I guess they were going to have a 6-man match maybe, but it was cut. They still got their run-ins. They still got their paydays. And that's cool. And Tommy Dreamer and Bubba Ray, they actually disagree on that spot because Bubba thought that it was forced. He didn't feel like the match needed it. But I got to side with Tommy Dreamer. I mean, it was cool to see, as a fan, it was cool to see all those guys come out and get their moments. Another interesting side note for this show is that New Jack was originally considered. New Jack. Could you imagine New Jack having to follow Vince McMahon rules? WWE was interested in bringing him in at the time because they were going to use him in their ongoing Cena storyline. The angle where Cena got stabbed in the nightclub, it was originally supposed to be New Jack. He was going to be the one that was the stabber, but he couldn't work this show because he had an ongoing legal issue that kept him from working in New York. And as a result of that, WWE just scrapped it all together and never brought him in. But that was interesting. This night was a really cool moment for a lot of people, me included. Fans, the boys, this moment, this pay-per-view just meant so much. ECW is always going to hold a special place in my heart, and I'm eternally thankful that Vince McMahon allowed this show to take place. Also, like I said, it's really nice for the boys. For a lot of the guys, this was a very good, much-needed payday. Mikey Whipwreck actually said on a podcast that he got paid $500 just for signing autographs for 20 minutes when the doors open. And then at the end of the night, Dave Hebner went around asked him how much of a cut he wanted for the draw for the show, and he said something like $50, but Hebner kind of scoffed at him and ended up giving him $400. And, Mikey was just blown away by that. So it's really cool. It's a really cool gesture. He didn't even have a match on the show. So, really nice gesture by the WWE there. This show is available on Peacock in all its glory. It's got the parental advisory warning at front because the fan language is unscripted and not able to be edited out. You do have some censor bleeps from the WWE production when Paul Lee dropped the F word, Rob Van Dam dropped the F word, Bischoff dropped the F word. But this show is about as raw and authentic as you could get after ECW's doors closed. Now, normally right about here is where I would tell you how I don't like how they book these matches order-wise, and I would reorder the matches as far as how I think they should have done it. But I'm not going to do that here. I think this card was perfectly put together. I like the flow of the matches. I like the card placement on all of them. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you get a little peek behind the curtains here. For years, this is about the time that this show happened, I wanted a WCW One Night Stand. I wanted a WCW reunion one-off show because WCW was my childhood favorite promotion, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. WCW, ECW, Ring of Honor, that's my 3 favorite promotions. So let's put ourselves in 2005 and let's book a WCW One Night Stand. Here's the matches that I would have put together for that card. For your opener, I would have put Chris Jericho versus Rey Mysterio. Then I would go Dustin Rhodes versus Steven Regal, a.k.a. William Regal. Next, I would go triple threat match. La Parka versus Psychosis versus Juventud Guerrera. Man, you talk about some action in that one. Next up, I'd put Fit Finlay versus Buff Bagwell. Then I'd go Chavo Guerrero versus Billy Kidman. Let's throw in a tag match now. Let's go Steiner Brothers versus Harlem Heat. Follow that up with Eddie Guerrero versus Conan. Next up, we'll throw another tag team match. The Horsemen, Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko versus Raven and Saturn. Your co-main event, I would put Sting versus Ric Flair. That was the last match ever on WCW Nitro. So, yeah, let's do it. Sting versus Flair. And then for your feel-good, go-home, let's get more people on the card. Throw some people out there and let the baby faces go over. Let's do the NWO. Hall, Nash, and Hogan. And let's put them against DDP, Goldberg, and the Giant, a.k.a. the Big Show. Let's let the baby faces go over so your fans go home happy. And let's have some fun. I wished I put this list together years ago, like 2006-ish, I think. And I was like, man, I wish they would have done this. And I still wish they would have done that. Obviously, you can't now. Too many people are gone. Too many of these guys that are alive can't wrestle anymore. But it would have been cool at the time. Next up, we'll go our Shockmaster Shockingly Bad moment of the night. It would be very easy for me to say WWE's involvement. It'd be very easy for me to, crap on Bischoff and JBL and Kurt Angle and Edge and all them being in the balcony again, but I'm not going to do it. Let's go with something that was actually shockingly bad, and I'm going to go with Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Benoit. I just think that match had so much more potential than what we actually got. Not a bad match necessarily, but given how great those two were in the ring and the chemistry they had, we should have got more. As far as my RVD 5-star moment of the show, I can't do RVD really because he didn't have a match. I mean, his spot was awesome, but it doesn't get any more awesome than the Sandman's entrance. That 5 minutes was absolutely perfect, and it was the best thing about the card. Got you in your feels, just the nostalgia flowing. So yeah, Sandman's entrance takes the cake there. Now that about wraps it up for this week's episode. I will be returning to the poll format for my next episode. Be on the lookout on Twitter if you hear this, before the next episode airs. I'm going to run that poll probably over the weekend and put 4 options up. Just vote. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. It's at @DMFrank_. That's at @DMFrank_. Follow the pod on Twitter. It's at @LoreOfTheRing_. Be sure to share this podcast with your Mark and Jabroni friends. Spread the word. Drop me a follow. Drop me a subscription. Drop me a rating, comment, all that good stuff. And yeah, like that. ECW One Night Stand 2005 is down for the 3 count. And I'll catch you next time.